It's love. It's love. And so, in return, we learned this week 1, our response to God is obedience and all those things, but our response to God is out of love, right? And we went back to that verse in Ephesians where it's like, you're doing great. You work hard for me. You serve me. You do all these things. But I have this against you. You lost your first love. You're not doing it out of love. And so we need to, as believers, constantly be bringing that idea, that concept, that feeling, that motivation that we are doing this out of a heart of love. We love God. God first loved us. We should love him. That was week 1. Week 2, we talked about loving one another, and I'll just leave that. It should be fresh in your mind from last week, but it's on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and check that out. By this, all people will know you're my disciples if you love one another. Right? What did Jesus say? A new command I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. It is vital. If you're not loving one another in church, then you got to deal with some things. Right? Because this place should be a place of safety. This place should be a place where when people walk through the doors, they're like, something's different here because everybody kind of like loves one another. Maybe they don't always get along. Maybe they don't always agree, but there's something different here. It's what they noticed in the New Testament. Like, sure, they had the Holy Spirit. They didn't have the Bible yet. They had a risen Lord, but it was like, they love one another. You know what they got charged with in the first century? I'm going off on a tangent here. What they got charged with was having love feasts. Everybody would go to the magistrates and they would complain about the Christians who would cloister themselves off, and you know what they were doing was having communion. But the other people called them, they're having love feasts. They're getting together and loving each other. That's what they got charged with. That was the big crime. And so I feel like that's what we should be practicing too. So this week, I tried to prep you as much as I could. We're talking about family, and we're talking about the fact that we have to have love for God. Right? God has love for us. We have to have love for God. We have to have love for one another. And you know what the Bible talks about is having love for your family. It's like, oh man, this series was going so great. Right? Because I really, it's a challenge to love people in the church, but I only see them for an hour and a half on a Sunday. So yeah, I can get over myself there, but my family, I live with my family. My family, like this is, cap off the toothpaste type stuff here. This is garbage out type stuff right here. Like I'm meddling, right? When I was a young father, I had a moment in the week that I look forward to, and I had a moment in the week where everything was all right. And we were pastoring in Highway Church in Barrie, and Taylor was probably like 8 or something, maybe 9, maybe like 8. Lots of energy, right? Cute as a button, that kind of stuff, right? All dressed up. By then, at that point, you could still tell them what to wear. So Carolyn would always dress the kids so nicely. And so Taylor was 8, Tori was like 4, right? The little ringlety, soft curls, bows in hair, right? Decked out for church. And then Joe was like 2. So Joe would kill you with his eyes, right? And so I would, work all the way to Sunday. We had 2 services. I would go through services. I'd be exhausted. And it would be kind of like, being a young parent is exhausting, right? It's exhausting. And so you're just exhausted. But there was that one moment after church, and you've done all the fellowship, and you've done the service, and you've had the altar time, you've done the prayer, and you're walking out. And I remember walking out, and usually Carol and I would be holding hands or whatever. Parking lot would be empty. Most people gone home. And the 3 kids would be walking to the car. And we'd either be going home for lunch or we'd be going out for lunch. And I'd be like, this is my window. This is where it's perfect. There's nothing to think about. There's no stress. Kids are kind of getting along at this point. Taylor's not teasing them mercilessly at this point. And Carol and I, and it was just like, sun is shining, summer day, and it's just perfect. And so I say all that to say that why was that so beautiful for me? Because everything else lived in stark contrast. And if you have been a parent of a young family, or you are a parent of a young family, or you have grandkids or whatever, you know that that is not the norm, right? You don't it's not all frosty and the music is playing underneath and it's just beautiful and you're kind of like throwing tulips in the air and this is family life. This is the way it is in my, But for that one moment for me on a Sunday, I was like, yes, and I would take as long as I could to walk to the car because it was perfect. And I knew it was perfect because the rest of the week was usually get off your sister, stop eating the cookie, turn the TV off, shut the video game, come do your homework. And that's all Carolyn stuff. I was other stuff. But, there was always these tensions. And so families are difficult, aren't they? I didn't even get one amen. Not even one. And you guys are all just like biting your lip because they're like, darn right, families are challenging. It's okay, guys. It's okay to be honest in church. Families are tough, right? Grow in them, existing in them if they're mature. Like even when you're grandparents, you're not unscathed. You're still like fighting the deal about, well, why did they make that decision? And why are they doing that? I don't know why they're doing that. And how do I step into this? Families are tough. And so what I want to do is I want to speak into families. I'm going to ask the question about you. How are you loving your family intentionally? How are you loving your family? But before we get there, we have to build some definitions. Because families today are different. If we were preaching 100 years ago, probably everybody in the room would be about the same mentality when it came to families. But now families are different, aren't they? And so I want to build some definitions, and then we're going to go forward with the Word of God. And I pray that our families will be stronger, and there will be greater love in our families as we go forward, okay? So here's the first thing. Family is different for us personally. Family is different for us personally. Everybody in this room has a different story of families of origin, right? Some people might be second-generation Canadians. Some people might be first-generation Canadians. Origin is different. We know divorce is a thing. Being a single parent is a thing. Having a blended family is a thing. We also have nuclear families as well, mom and dad, and all of that stuff. Then we also have grandparents, great-grandparents. We have parents. We have people that don't have kids. We have people who have never been married before, but they're still part of a family because they're a sibling. You see what I'm saying? It's different. Every person in this room, if we ask them what the definition of family would be different personally, right? So we kind of, okay, well, that's the first hurdle we got to get over. Second thing is, there is also an attack on the family and the definition of family culturally, and this is different too. Because if we go back 50 or 60 years, people were like, well, no, that's basically a family. And they might be a gong show of a family, but that's a family, right? A mom, dad, and 16 kids. But there's an attack on masculinity, right? What is a man and what a man should be, how a man should act. In Hollywood, they are dumbing men down and have been for decades. The men are always the doofus now, right? If you go back, we talked about this in our small group. If you go back when the first little sitcoms or whatever came out, what was it? Andy of Mayberry, who was a cop and a father, right? It was Father Knows Best, My Three Sons, Leave It to Beaver, right? The father was always the wise one, right? And now, I won't even go there, but men are not the same. There is also in our culture an overemphasis on femininity, I get that out, women power, the rise of the woman. And so I'm not actually going to make any editorial comments on that. I'm just saying this is a thing. This is a thing that we're dealing with in our church. And as we go through this message. Attack on masculinity, overemphasis on femininity, the roles in that, personal happiness, right? It used to be there was a duty as it came to a family, and now it's just like, well, does it make you happy? Well, are you happy in your family? Or if you're not happy, then, right? It's your truth. It's what makes you happy. The old rules were so clear, and as we've moved into the future, all the rules are different, and there's confusion around them. And it's important to articulate that, guys. I can't give a message on family if we don't go, hey, everybody's coming from a personal spot, right? And then also culture has just kind of like bombarding us with all these different ideas. We don't even know what a family is. Are we even allowed to have a nuclear? Like, is that even a thing? The third thing is this. no family is perfect conditionally. So the condition of your family, because everybody's sitting there going, okay, well, I hope he doesn't point me out because my family is a gong show. Like, and there's no closed circuit TV video, but if people had closed circuit TV video of my family, it would be viral, right? Hey, listen, take a breath. Everybody in this comes from a broken family, and everybody in this is in a broken family. Can I say that? Well, my family was good. Okay, great. Your family was broken in some way, shape, or form. Because humanity is broken. So can we all just relax and take a pill? Like, it's okay. It's okay. I came from a dysfunctional family. My mother was an alcoholic, right? My family was loving. My mother loved me, but it was hard. If we go back, right, to the fact that families are tough. So this is a challenge. So personally, we're all different. So even when we're talking with other people, they maybe don't relate because they don't really know. And then culturally, it's like, well, we don't even know what this really means. How's this supposed to work? And I don't even really know. There's no like rule book that we can go to go, oh, we check these boxes. And then by the same token, it's like, well, my family was a gong show. My father was a gong show. My mother was a gong show. My brother, my sister, whatever. Maybe me. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was you. No family's perfect. So jump in the water, guys. We're all in this together. And I think that's so important. That we don't have to pretend in this room and go, oh no, I think my family, you can say your family's good. That's great. But no family is perfect. And here's the thing that I love, and I love this about God. It's because God joins us in this, doesn't he? No family is perfect biblically. When I looked up this message, I'm like, okay, well, let's find the perfect. There's got to be one in here somewhere. Have you ever read Genesis, guys? It's like, The Young and the Restless. I'm not kidding. Like, do you know the first siblings killed each other? Literally. Right? There was like so much sin in the first marriage that it caused them to be cursed and out of the garden. God's like, get out of my sight. That's the first marriage. Like Adam didn't even have he couldn't even go looking for a better wife. Some of us are like, well, if I had a better wife. Well, Adam. No family is perfect. It's staggering to me that the Bible is a who's who of how not to do family. It really is. And if I was God and I was putting a book together, well, I would sanitize that puppy. Right? I would be like, well, here's how to do family, and let's pretend that there's no struggles or no issues. No, God's like, no, all of the struggles and all of the issues with every family. So it's not that we're just in good company in this room. We're in good company, historically speaking. Okay, so now what? Okay, Pastor Rob, you're kind of like, it's pretty doom and gloom, these definitions. It's pretty bad. It's going to get better. Let's first define the family, and then I have just an amazing scripture that I pray will just speak to your spirit, speak into wherever you are in your family, and just allow you to push in with greater love. That's what this is all about. So, definition for family. For today's purposes, I'm going to say your family is that group of people that sleep under your roof. Can I say that? Or at least at one point in time slept under your roof. That's your family. That's your family. It's the people you eat dinner with on a consistent basis or eat meals with on a consistent basis. That's your family. It's those people that are always there, whether you want them to or not, at Christmas, Easter, birthdays. If they're there, they're family, and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah. Uncle so-and-so showed up. I'm like, okay, well, he's part of the family, right? Aunt so-and-so's drinking again. Well, she's part of the family. She's at the occasion. It's the people who are on speed dial or the people who are on text. And you're just like, you don't even have to think about it. You know their number. That's your family. Okay? So that's the definition, because we're talking mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, nephews, grandparents, grandchildren, single mom, single dad, divorced family. Are we together on that? Let's move forward with that definition. Now, with all of that said, we're asking this question: what does it look like for you to love that family? Because God has called us to love him. He's called us to love one another. And he's calling us to greater love in our family. It's like, oh, God, it's a bridge too far. I don't know if I can get there, but that's what we're trying to do today. So how do you contribute to a healthy and loving family environment? So, I have a fantastic scripture, and it's going to end with a great challenge, and we're going to take 3 points out of that. I'm trying to go quick because I want to have some prayer time at the end of the service. So let's read through Nehemiah 4. We're going to go from 1 to 14, if you're following along in your Bibles. Nehemiah was a man who was the cupbearer of the king in Persia. And the reason he was in Persia is because people had gone and had attacked Israel, had taken them over, destroyed their temple, destroyed their walls, destroyed their city, and taken them as exiles, and they were prisoners, and they had to live in other lands. Babylon, Persia. Nehemiah was specifically Persia. And so Nehemiah only knew living in Persia. But in his head, he was like, he had a heart for his homeland. And so as he was working for the king, he was kind of like sad, and he was just like distressed because his homeland laid in ruins. And so he had this, God put this burden on his heart that he would restore the walls of the city of Jerusalem, which stand to this day. And so that's kind of the backdrop to that. So he gets permission from the king. He actually gets some more than permission. He gets like completely resourced by the king. And so he flies over, and he has a whole bunch of people, and he starts to work with families to build this wall. And so what I want to use is the metaphor of the rebuilding of the wall, of making that wall strong. I want to use that as a metaphor to making your family strong. Okay, so track with me here, and let's read the story. Starting at verse 1, it says Sanballat, and Sanballat was one of these guys who was a governor over the region. He didn't like the fact that they were building this wall. So Sanballat was very angry when he learned that we were rebuilding the wall. This is Nehemiah speaking. He flew into a rage and mocked the Jews, so all the people that were trying to do this, saying in front of his friends and the Samaritan army officers, "What does this bunch of poor, feeble Jews think they're doing?" So if you're like me, sometimes you feel like, well, I want to have good, strong family values. I want to push into my family. I want to build my family up. But then there's other people going like, what do you think you're doing? Like, it's stupid. It's old-fashioned, man. Like, why are you even doing that? Right? So track with me. Do they think they can build a wall in a single day just by offering a few sacrifices? Do they think that they can make something of stones from a rubbish heap? And charred ones at that. Because when the Babylonians came in, the Persians came in, they just burnt everything to the ground. They razed it all to the ground. Which maybe is a very good picture of what your family feels like and looks like. And you're like, yeah, it's kind of a rubbish heap. You know? Like, there were times in my family where I'm just like, there's nothing positive here. Not our family. I'm talking about my bio family, right? It was just like, you know, trouble and dissension and problems, right? So Tobiah the Ammonite, which was another dude who was standing beside him, remarked that a stone wall would collapse even if a fox walked along the top of it. So again, it's this ridicule. It's just like, oh, you think you're going to build a family, do you? Think you're gonna have these good Christian family values? You think you're gonna have a good, strong family unit? As if. The first sign of trouble, something's gonna come along, it's gonna destroy it. You feeling it? Feeling the tension? Let's go to verse 4. And then I prayed, and I love this, because Nehemiah doesn't go back at them, he prays to the Lord. Okay. Hear us, O God, for we are being mocked. May their scoffing fall back on their own heads, and may they themselves become captives in a foreign land. Do not ignore their guilt. Do not blot out their sins, for they have provoked you to anger here in front of the builders. Remember, this family thing is God's idea in the first place. Okay? Continue on. Verse 8. Okay, thank you. All right, I stand corrected. At last the wall was completed to half its height around the entire city for the people who had worked with enthusiasm, which is a statement in and of itself, because I don't know about you, but like, anybody in the room have your kids half raised? It's like, oh, this is harder than the first half. And for those of you who are sitting pretty and you're empty nesters or your grandparents, and you're like, yeah, that's right, you enjoy that time. when the wall is half built and you just think your family's going well, and then wham. Okay, sorry, that might have been a little too personal. But when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the Ashdodites heard that the work was going ahead and that the gaps in the wall of Jerusalem were being repaired, they were furious. So they're actually making some headway, and they're doing some good stuff here. They're building the wall. They're building the wall. They all made plans to come and fight against Jerusalem and throw us into confusion. Right? Like, understand, if you're in your family and there's some issues, there might be more spiritual dynamics going on than you want to let on. Right? A lot of times it's personal. Oh, you know what she said? Oh, I was cutting the potato salad and she said, no, 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 no. I'm not speaking to her anymore. That's my family. There is spiritual things at play that want to divide us in our families, divide us in our marriages, cause dissension between fathers and sons, fathers and daughters, mothers and sons, mothers, right? Isn't there? We have to recognize that. And so again, Nehemiah turns to prayer. He says, but we prayed to our God and guarded the city day and night to protect ourselves. So they prayed and strategized, which we're about to do. And then the people of Judah began to complain. So now it's the people inside. And yeah, like if you ever tried to do family devotions, or if you ever tried to do something healthy in your family, it's like, I don't want to do this, it's boring. When do we get to, I don't want, right? And you're just like, oh my gosh, work with me, people. So the people of Judah, they began to complain, and the workers getting tired. So much rubbish. Like, this is just garbage. Our family's garbage. How are we supposed to build something out of this? There's so much rubble to be moved. There's so many issues. There's so many problems. It's such a struggle. I don't know. How am I going to talk to my sister-in-law about this issue? How am I going to talk to my uncle about this thing? There's just so much. Can I get a witness in the house of God? Anybody got that? Oh my goodness. You're going to the family thing and you're just like, is Auntie so-and-so going to be there? Oh, she is? Okay. So much rubbish. Am I being too honest? Okay. I think I'm being just honest enough, but some of you guys are just like, I'm not sure Pastor Rob can be that honest in the house. Just read Genesis. This week, your homework is to read Genesis, and you'll come back going, right. Okay. So the Jews, okay, so where are we? We're on 11? Okay. Meanwhile, our enemies were saying, before they know what's happening, we will swoop down on them and kill them and end their work. And the Jews who lived near the enemy came and told us again and again, they will come from all directions and attack us. And again, this is what it feels like. It feels like, well, we're trying to build a little family here. And it's like social media, movies, TV, school, friends, everything is coming at us to attack us. We need a strategy. We need to pray to the Lord. So Nehemiah is so smart and so resolved that this wall is going to be built. So I placed armed guards behind the lowest parts of the wall in the exposed areas, and I stationed people to stand guard by families. I just love that word is in there. Because if you read the book of Nehemiah, it's like, well, this family was responsible for this part of the wall. This family was responsible for this part of the wall. Like, it's the perfect analogy for us as we're trying to build and have healthy, strong families and add love to whatever our family looks like. I stationed people to stand guard by families armed with swords, spears, and bows. Dang, this is getting serious. Because I thought we were just building wall, and now I'm like got a spear in my hand. And I'm not afraid to use it. And this is the money verse right here. This is the money verse right here. So let me read it, and we'll go back on it. It says, then as I looked over the situation, I called together the nobles and the rest of the people. Remember, they were tired and all that stuff. Don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord, who is great and glorious, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Like, this is not going to happen without any effort. You need greater love if you're going to have greater love in your family. But you have to be the one that puts it in there. So you see, Nehemiah is like, guys, muster the strength. You thought this was going to be easy? You thought having a family was going to be easy? No family has ever been easy. But that doesn't allow you just to kind of go, okay, well, family's not easy. I'm just going to hit the escape hatch. Right? You know, the Staples button, that was easy. Yeah, that doesn't exist here. That doesn't apply here. It's hard to have the hard conversations. It's hard to raise kids. It's hard to watch your adult kids struggle. It's hard, but that doesn't allow you to abdicate. If we're going to build strong families and we're going to continue with it, then we have to do these three things. We have to not be afraid of what culture says, or what the movie says, or what the friends say, or the friend's family. We have to not be afraid of that. We have to remember God, right? In His love. Remember we talked about it a couple weeks ago. And then we have to fight for our families. So that means, guys, next level involvement, next level strategies, next level love, next level learning, next level investment, all of those things. So let me just go through these really, really quickly. Number one is don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of what's out there. Just take a beat and just know that God's got it. Can we do that? Just take a beat and just go, I know, I'm full of anxiety because what if this, what if that, what if she, what if he? Just take a beat and go, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not going to be afraid of things that I'm making up in my own mind. If we go back on some of the verses that we've been covering, 1 John 4:18 says, there's no fear in love. Perfect love casts out all fear. So when you bring that love, all of a sudden you dispel all the fear, including the fear that's inside yourself. It's hard to do. It's a fight, but you got to do it. Number two is to remember the Lord. The last 2 weeks we couldn't get away from this because it was in our request from God. You know, I've loved you, I've given my son for you, so love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Right? That was week 1. And then week 2 was the same thing. You know, Jesus says, as I have loved you, so you should love one another. So remember God's MO. I'm going to show you something that I just found so fascinating this week, because we covered that verse in Deuteronomy, and we read them when Jesus quotes it in Matthew and Mark. But check this out. Check this out, and then think about what we're talking about here in Deuteronomy 6. Hear, O Israel, be careful to obey, so that it might go well with you, you may increase greatly, and the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. This is what we've been reading. We're like, okay, yeah, why are you reviewing this? We'll just watch what it continues to say. These commandments I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them. It's like right after. It's like, love God first, family next. Like, are you hearing this? Like, God, thousands of years ago, was way ahead of where we are today. But it still speaks to us. Greater love. God has given us the greatest love. He's asking us to step up our love to Himself and to Him and to each other. And then He's like, and also impress it upon your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, under those roof times, at those dinner times, and when you walk along the road, or when you're driving in the car to hockey practice, or to band practice, or youth group, or wherever it is. You're just moving into this. This is you remembering the Lord. And when you lie down, and I loved and also hated prayer time, right? Bible time, songs, prayers, and what was it? Bible, songs, and prayers. All the above. And we prayed for all the stuffed animals. I don't even know if that's theologically accurate, but we did. So when you lie down and when you get up, so the first thing in the morning, hey guys, it's worship music, it's a verse, it's a promise. It's like, let's be founded on, let's let God be our cornerstone in this. Tie them as symbols on your hands, bind them on your foreheads, and write them on the door frames of your houses where your family lives, and on your gates. Remember the Lord. It's so hard, guys. If you want to be in the fight, you want to be in the fight, and you want to kind of, okay, I don't want to be afraid of them. And then it's like, yeah, but we're really not going to make a big deal of it at home. No, what God is saying is, you need to by strategy, make this a thing at home. Make this a priority at home. Go, these are the rules that we're kind of marching on. And we're not going to be judgmental, and we're not going to be dogmatic, but we're going to be presenting the truth of God in our home, right? When we lie down, when we get up, right? When we sit at home, when we walk along the road. And it blows my mind. It blows my mind that God had this right after. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. You got to put this in your kids. Okay. Number 3 is fight for your family. Fight for your family. You might be tired. You might really not even know the strategy. All those things. The one thing I do know is that good families don't happen by accident. Good families don't happen by accident. Whatever it is, we defined your family. Positive, environments, atmospheres, they don't happen by accident. You have to strategize. Carolyn and I are empty nesters. We're living on our own now, and we're kind of like, hey, we got to figure out how to do this now because they're all gone. And now, how do we parent them from a distance? And how do we work through our stuff? Right? It doesn't happen by accident. If we were to go, okay, well, I'll be downstairs watching TV and Carolyn will be upstairs reading. Oh, okay, we're going to have a great relationship. It's not going to work. We have to push into it. We have to fight. And if there was ever a fight to be had, it's for your family. If you think about the people who are going to be there when you die, I would put 95% of all of my effort into those things. It's about sacrifice. What's fighting about? It's about sacrifice, right? Jesus said, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down your life. When you start to offer forgiveness to siblings over things that happened 30 years ago, that's greater love. When you walk into your family reunion, and usually everybody's got their back up and they're all bristled and they're ready for a fight, but you walk in with grace and compassion for them, you bring greater love to your family. That does not happen by accident, right? That happens by intent. Meanwhile, the people of Judah were saying, strengthen the laborers. For the strength of the laborers is going out, and there is much rubble, and we cannot rebuild the wall. There's times when you just get tired, but you have to fight for your family. And that's what Nehemiah is doing. Guys, if we want this wall, we gotta fight through this. We gotta fight through the fatigue, we gotta fight through the issues, we gotta fight through the rubbish, we gotta fight through all of it so that we can build this wall. Greater love. So I recently watched this movie called King Richard. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It tracks through Richard Williams, who was the parent of Venus Williams and Serena Williams, who were tennis pros and tennis stars, and some would say probably the two greatest female tennis athletes in the history of female tennis. And so Richard Williams was absolutely maniacal about their training and about making sure that they worked on their serve and worked on their open stance for when they were returning a ball, and he would drill them and he would take them out, and he was like a professional coach for them. And he decided, actually even before they were born, that they were going to be tennis stars. Before they were born. And he just drilled it into them. You're a pro, you're a champion, you're right? And he just by intent, it might have borderline been abusive. However, he did it. Before they were born, he decided that they were going to be this way. There's a moment in the movie, there's actually two moments in the movie, and he has 5 girls, and they're all just stunning, beautiful girls, and they reach this age where the oldest girl is 16, and so they go to this tennis court, which is in a neighborhood, and they have no money, they're very impoverished, and there's some boys that come around, gang members, because they live in Compton. And so Richard Williams is there, and he's just kind of watching what's going on. And the one guy comes up and starts to hit on his oldest daughter. So you can, if you're a father in the room, you can appreciate some tension here. But there's a whole gang there, and he's got 5 daughters to protect. I thought about this when I thought about fighting for your family. So he just girls in the van. It's a great scene. Will Smith. And he walks up to this guy, and he just says to him, very peacefully, calmly, please don't talk to my daughter. She's only 16. I don't want you to talk to my daughter. And so, of course, this young punk who's 19 or 20 and full with attitude and all this, whatever. What are you going to do about it, old man? What are you going to do about it? What a great word picture for us. With the tension thick in the air, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about our families? When God is calling us to love Him, God is calling us to love one another, and God is saying, I want you to fight for your family. So, spoiler alert, run for the hills now. There's an altercation because this young punk won't let it go. And so Richard says, all I'm saying is please don't talk to my daughter. She's 16. I want you to leave her alone. Walks away, and of course, there's an altercation. And the entire gang surrounds him and just starts kicking the living daylights out of him. And in that moment, he lays down, fetal position, protects what he can protect, and just waits for the storm to pass. They give up, walk away. Rah, 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 rah. He gets up, dusts himself off into the van. Later in the movie, there's this moment where Venus Williams and because Venus starts to rise with her prominence and all of those things, and he seems like he's just overbearing and overprotective. Where this was good, it's all of a sudden, now Dad, it's a little too much. With tears in his eyes, he said, you know what? He says, when I was a kid, I was walking out of a variety store and somebody accused me of stealing something, and I didn't do it. And it was a white person. Racism was prevalent. And they kept accusing me, and they kept accusing me, and my father was there. They kept accusing me, and I said, no, I didn't take it. My father bought it for me. But this gang of white people gathered around this 10-year-old boy. Gathered around, accused him, and hurled insults at him. And they started to do the same thing. Started punching him, kicking him right to the ground. Fetal position. Kicking. You know what he saw out of the corner of his eye? He saw his father running away. My son will be okay. Left the fight. It might not be perfect. You might not get it all right. The fruit might be slow in coming. But to a person in this room, guys, whatever your family looks like, would you fight for your family? Fight for your family. Fight for those that are the closest to you. It'll probably be the most courageous thing you ever do. God is calling us to do that, to love those around us.